right, let's dive in. This deep dive is all about happiness. What really makes us happy? You sent me some pretty interesting stuff that suggests it's not the things we usually think about like money or a new car. It's personal growth.
Yeah, it does seem to go against a lot of what we think about when we think about happiness.
Yeah.
Like the source goes right into it, doesn't it? Saying we chase all these temporary things, relationships or money or success in our careers, and we do feel happy. But then it kind of levels out. Like those lottery winners, they're happy at first, but a year later it's back to how they felt before.
Interesting. So if it's not the stuff, then what is it? What does the source say is the magic ingredient?
Well, it talks about this idea of eudaimonia, it's Greek, and it focuses on the idea that happiness comes from purpose and self-realization. Like finding yourself. Actually, there's a story in the source about a CEO. He had everything, money, family, big office, but he was miserable. And he finally realized he was living someone else's life.
Yeah.
It wasn't what HE really wanted.
Makes sense. It's like that saying, you climb the ladder of success only to find it's leaning against the wrong wall.
Yes, exactly. And when we realize that we're on the wrong ladder, we feel stuck. The source says that's the opposite of growth. And growth is the key to being happy. So it's not about getting more stuff. It's about evolving, becoming better.
It makes you think, huh?
Yeah.
Like, I remember when I was so focused on getting a promotion that I forgot why I even liked my job in the first place. I was so unhappy, even though I was getting what I thought I wanted.
Oh, yeah, I've been there. That's exactly what the source is talking about. It's not saying those achievements are bad, just that they don't bring lasting happiness.
Yeah.
Actually, the source breaks it down into 4 parts of growth that, if we work on them, lead to a happier life.
Okay, so let's talk about them. First, personal growth. Why is this so important?
Well, it's all about pushing yourself past your limits.
Yeah.
Like being afraid of public speaking and then doing it anyway, or learning how to control your emotions better, or even just getting better at talking to people. The source says it's not always easy or comfortable, but that's where the change happens, right?
Yeah. Okay, next we have intellectual growth. I love this one. I'm always learning.
Me too. It's great, isn't it? But the source says it's not just about learning facts, it's about thinking critically, seeing things from different perspectives, and even changing your mind when you get new information.
So it's like learning how to think, not just what to think. Now, this next one is interesting. Emotional and spiritual growth. What does that even mean?
Well, it's about finding peace and connection, maybe through meditation or being in nature or even religion. The source emphasizes empathy, putting yourself in others' shoes, and gratitude, being thankful for what you have. These things bring a deeper kind of happiness that doesn't depend on outside stuff.
I get it. It's about feeling connected to yourself and something bigger.
Exactly. And finally, there's physical and health growth. It might seem obvious, but the source says if we don't take care of ourselves, it impacts everything else.
You can't grow if you're exhausted all the time.
Yeah. The source talks about finding exercise you enjoy, not just what you think you should do, getting enough sleep and figuring out how to manage stress, maybe through meditation or nature, whatever works for you. It's about taking care of your body so you can take care of your mind and spirit too.
So these 4 pillars, they work together. You have to work on them all to really grow. But I'm curious, for our listeners, what area feels most important to them right now? What part of themselves are they most drawn to growing?
It's interesting, right? We talk about happiness, but is it really just one thing? The source makes me think there's more to it.
I see that too. It's like the happiness you get from buying something new is different from the happiness you feel when you learn something new. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And there are actually names for those. Psychologists call them hedonic and eudaimonic happiness. Hedonic is that instant pleasure, like a sugar rush. Eudaimonic is about meaning, like what we're talking about with growth and self-actualization.
So it's okay to enjoy the little things, but if that's all you're after, it's not going to last.
Right. Like building a house on sand, the source talks about how we're really fulfilled when we live according to our values, when we do things that we're passionate about, and even when we embrace challenges instead of avoiding them. That can make us happier.
Yeah, I feel most alive when I'm pushing myself. Like when I took on that huge project at work or when I started learning how to play the guitar.
Perfect example. It shows how happiness from growth works in real life.
Yeah.
And it brings us back to those 4 pillars. You know what's cool? They're all connected. When you improve in one area, it helps the others too.
So you can't just pick and choose. It's got to be holistic.
Exactly. Like a garden. You can't just water one plant and expect the whole thing to thrive. Got to tend to all of them. And that's where knowing yourself comes in.
Right. If you know what you're good at, what you're not so good at, and what's important to you, you can set the right goals for yourself.
Yeah, without that self-awareness, you might end up chasing someone else's idea of happiness. There's a story in the source about this person who worked a high-powered job for years, but it was draining their soul. Turns out they were living someone else's dream.
Like we're given a map, but we need to figure out where our own compass is pointing before we can use it, right?
Yeah, great way to put it. And once you know where you're going, the source says, you gotta start moving. Even small steps towards those goals that are truly yours.
That's where a lot of people get stuck, though. They have the dream, but they don't know how to make it happen.
And that's why the source gives us some steps. It talks about setting tiny goals, like really small ones, celebrating even the little wins,
Yeah,
and really important, seeing setbacks as lessons, not failures.
I like that. Setbacks as lessons. It takes the pressure off.
Yeah, totally. And that leads us to mindset, remember? We were talking about fixed mindset, where people think they can't change.
Yeah, like, I'm just not good at math, that kind of thing.
The opposite is growth mindset, believing you can improve with effort.
So instead of saying, I'm bad at math, you'd say, I haven't mastered algebra yet, but I'm going to keep trying.
Exactly. The source says this shift in thinking is super important for facing challenges, sticking with it when things get tough, and feeling that deep satisfaction that comes from growing.
It makes sense, right? That growth mindset can be applied to anything, not just specific skills.
Yeah. It's about being curious, open to new things, and always willing to learn. The source says the first step is just noticing when you're thinking with a fixed mindset.
Like hearing that little voice in your head that says you can't do something.
Yeah. And when you hear it, challenge it. Is it really true? Is there any proof?
So you become aware of your thoughts, and then you choose to replace the negative ones with positive ones.
Yeah, that's it. And it helps to be around people who support your growth. Find those people who cheer you on, who inspire you to get out of your comfort zone and embrace the journey. Becoming the best version of yourself, even if it gets messy sometimes.
Wow, we really went deep today. It's clear now, isn't it? Real happiness comes from growing, not from stuff. And we talked about those 4 pillars: personal, intellectual, emotional, and spiritual, and physical growth. It's about the whole person.
Yeah, for sure. And what's great is that the source gives us actual tools to make this happen. It's not just some vague idea. It feels like something we can actually do, even when things get tough.
Absolutely. It's not about being
Yeah.
perfect, right? The source even says it's a journey, not a destination.
Yeah, I liked that part. It's saying, hey, you're always going to be a work in progress. And that's okay. There's always something new to learn, new skills to master, new ways of seeing the world.
Humans are curious, aren't we? Always looking for something new.
Yeah, it's in our nature. And the source says that's where real fulfillment comes from. We need to keep evolving, otherwise we get stuck, unhappy.
So how do we make sure we're actually doing it, not just talking about it? How do we stay on that path of growth?
Well, remember those tiny goals? Breaking things down into small steps. That's a big one. Makes it less overwhelming.
Like stepping stones, right? One step at a time.
Exactly. And then celebrate those little wins. Don't get so focused on the next big thing that you forget to appreciate how far you've come.
That's where gratitude comes in, doesn't it? Being thankful for the progress we've made, even if it seems small.
It does. And hey, remember, you're going to have setbacks. Everyone does. But with that growth mindset, those setbacks become lessons, not
Yeah.
failures.
Love that idea. The source even talks about writing them down like a failure journal, seeing what went wrong and learning from it.
That's so smart because it's all about mindset in the end. Believing you can grow, seeing challenges as chances to learn, and knowing that setbacks are just part of the process.
This has been an amazing deep dive. I feel like I have a whole new understanding of what it means to live a really fulfilling life.
Me too. And before we go, I want to leave our listeners with something the source says. What seed of growth will you plant today?
I love that. It reminds us that we have the power to choose to grow, to nurture our potential, and to create a life that feels right, authentic,
Yeah.
true to ourselves.
Exactly. And even small actions can make a big difference. So what's one step you can take today to move towards that growth and happiness?
What a great question to end on. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey. We can't wait to see what seeds of growth you plant and watch them grow.